Hi everyone, it's Susie from the Smoky Lake Public Library and welcome to After School Adventures. So this week we're doing a couple of really cool crafts that are going to kind of test our patience. We're going to have to wait for these things to dry overnight. We're going to be making some psychedelic sun catchers, and then we're going to be making some papier-mâché bowls. So let's take a jaunt back through time to yesterday when I got started on our sun catcher. Hello, Susie from the past here. So let's get started on our very first overnight craft. So what we're going to need for this one is some sort of plastic disposable lid. So something that would come off of maybe some margarine or some yogurt or something like that. You'll need some food coloring, probably not this much, I have a bunch here. You just need a couple colors because you don't want it to get too brownish. But you need some food coloring, you need a toothpick, you need a lot of white glue, probably not this much, but you need enough to fill up your lid. And then eventually you'll need some sort of string or ribbon and a hole punch, but we'll do that after. So first thing you want to do is just fill up your lid with white glue. So you don't need to fill it up full, right? But you need to fill it up thick enough that it's not going to be too fragile, right? So this is why it's going to take so long to dry, because we're going to use a lot of glue and all of that glue has to dry. So I'm just going to pour some into my lid. So there. Kind of just wait a second for it to reach all the edges so it just slowly will move into place and get all nice and flat. But in the meantime, get your toothpick ready. And if you want to just help it along, you can kind of push it into place. There we go. Okay. So once you have a nice solid block of glue, you'll want to take a couple of your food coloring colors and just drop it in the glue. So I mentioned this before, but you don't want to do too much because they're all going to start to blend together a little bit. And you know, if you blend too many colors together, you start to get brown, which is not that nice. So I'm going to do 3 to start off with, just 3 drops. And then you take your toothpick and you kind of push it around so you can draw it out and it'll kind of start stringing around. And that's all for now. Now we just have to let this big disc dry. So you'll be able to tell when it's starting to dry. The glue is going to start to kind of come away from the edges of your plastic lid. But it could take a day and it can even take a couple of days. So you just have to watch really carefully and wait for it to dry. Okay, it is now the next day and I am ready to peel off my sun catcher. So I will say mine looks a little funny because I was not patient enough and I was trying to peel it away before it was fully dry. So if you leave yours long and you're more patient than I am, yours should even be nicer than that. But you'll just need a hole punch and some ribbon for this very last step. So it should be able to peel away from your lid fairly easy if it is dry all the way. So like I said, it should start to peel away from the plastic lid eventually, or you might have to get something small in there, like something like this, just thin and hard to kind of get in there. But then once you do, you can just kind of peel it off, almost like a sticker. And there! So you should have your sun catcher with slightly nicer edges than mine. But then we're nearly done. All we need to use is a hole punch, and then we need a little bit of ribbon, and we punch a hole in our sun catcher. If you don't have a hole punch, you can get your parents to help you cut a hole. It'll probably be a bit tricky, so hole punch is easiest if you do have one. But then you just string your ribbon through and hang it up where you like. It's not a very sunny day, so I can't really show you, but it would look really cool in the window. And here is the sun catcher. I'm really happy with how it turned out. You can see that the colors kind of bloomed out and made a really, really cool psychedelic effect, just like I promised. So now that we're all done with this, let's go back in time again and try our papier-mâché bowls. All right, we are back in the past and ready to start our next craft. So we're going to be making papier-mâché bowls. So we're going to be making our own bowls that we're going to be able to decorate really nicely. And papier-mâché is made with newspaper and flour and water, and then you stick it on and then it dries for a really long time. So what you need is some sort of container that you want your bowl to be like. So this is going to be my base, and then the bowl is going to take on this shape, right? So you need something like that, and then you need some plastic wrap to cover up whatever you're using as your base, so then it's really easy to slide our stuff off once it's all dry. So you need this plastic wrap, you need some flour and water. You need a bowl to mix that in along with a whisk, or if you don't have a whisk, just a fork so we can break up all the flour chunks. And then lastly, we need something like newspaper. So like a textured paper is what we need. So newspaper is probably the easiest to find, but if you don't have that, like construction paper or like a paper bag should work fine. But like I said, newspaper is what I'm going to use. It's probably the easiest one to find. But that's it. Let's get started. So I'm going to start off with, like I said, just covering our container in plastic wrap. So you want to try and make it nice and smooth, just because if there's a big bump, you'll end up seeing it on your bowl later. So try and cover it nice and smooth. But make sure you cover every little bit because, like I said, it'll be really, really tricky to slide off if we don't cover everything. So if your plastic wrap isn't sticking, you might want to tape it to the inside of your bowl so it just doesn't slide around. But go ahead and do that, and then we'll make up our mixture. All right, so it's all covered up. So now I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to mix up our water and flour. So get out a nice bowl and a whisk or a fork if you don't have a whisk. And what you want to do is basically have double the amount of water than you have flour. So here I have about a cup of flour, throwing that in. And then I'm going to add about 2 cups of water. So you're looking for kind of like a thin batter type feel. So if you've ever made pancakes, it kind of is supposed to look like pancake batter. So go ahead and mix it up really, really well. And then if you feel like the consistency is a little off, then you could just add more water or more flour to get it how you like. And don't worry about getting it too exact, because it's not really exact. It's just an estimate. All right, so it's done here. So I just want to kind of show you what it's like. So it's pretty liquidy, right? And I made sure all the kind of lumpy flour bits are out of it. So once you have that, you can set it aside for a while, and we're going to start cutting up some strips of newspaper. So you can go ahead and do a bunch at once because they don't really need to be very nice looking. And I'm going to cut these in half because they're pretty long. So this is the kind of size that I think is easiest to work with. So not too thin and not too long is what kind of we're looking for. But you know, you just kind of have to judge on what you think will work for you. So if you want to kind of change it up, that's totally fine. But cut out quite a few strips because we don't only have to cover our bowl once. We have to cover it a few times. So you want to make sure you have enough for that. All right, so here comes the messy part. So what we need to do is take a single strip of paper and dip it in our mixture. Like I said, it's going to be messy. Make sure it's totally in there and then lift it back out. And then you kind of want to push the extra stuff off with your hands. And then once it's nice and covered, just lay it on your bowl. You can kind of push it down, make sure it's all stuck. And just keep doing that. So we want to make sure there's lots of overlapping with our strips and lots of different layers. But we're not necessarily going to do it all at once. So I'm going to start with like a first layer and let it dry a little bit, and then we're going to get to a second layer. Okay, and then you don't have to worry about lining up the edges right now, because we will be able to kind of trim the very rim of our bowl once we are all done. So it doesn't really need to be nice and straight right now, because we will make it nice and straight later on. Okay, so I'm happy with my first layer. Now I'm going to let it dry for a little bit. So you can let it dry in the sun if it's a sunny day, or in front of a fan to make it go a little bit faster. But we want it mostly dry before we add another layer. So that'll probably take a couple hours. But in the meantime, before you go away and just start letting it dry, we're going to set this on top of something so it can dry kind of away from the surface, like this.
2 hours later.
Alright, so I'm going to put on a second layer of paper. It's not totally dry, but if I touch it, it's not really getting anything on my fingers. So that's how I can tell that it's kind of ready to get another layer. So just the same thing now. And then you kind of want to look for little places where the paper is kind of bubbling up. So we're going to kind of try and cover up any cracks we have left over from our last layer. Alright, I've done my second layer. So I think I'm going to leave mine now to dry overnight. If you're doing a really big bowl, or you're kind of worried that it's gonna break, then you might want to do a couple more layers. But I think because my bowl is kind of small and I'm just going to use it for little things, nothing too heavy, I think that just 2 layers will be enough. So I'm going to let it dry overnight, and then once it's dry, we'll have to take it out of the mold. Alright, it's the next day. My bowl has dried. I've actually dropped it and it didn't break at all, so that is a very good sign. So now there's a couple things you can do. If you have a lot of overhang, then now you can trim your paper to the correct length. But maybe if you're a little short, you might have to take it off the mold when you trim it. So I do have to wait to take it off the mold, which I will do soon. But first, it's probably easiest to actually paint the outside of our bowl while it's still on. So let's first just paint this outside. So what we need is just some acrylic paint, because that's the paint that's really, really sticky, and also it's very opaque. It covers up a lot of stuff, and we have to cover up all this newsprint, right? So go ahead and paint it however you like. So I have it painted. Now we just have to let it dry, and then we will do the unmolding. Alright, so it's all dry now. So now it's time for the fun part. We get to remove it from our mold. So it should be pretty easy if we've used some plastic wrap. So if you did what I suggested and taped some down, just go ahead and remove anywhere that it's taped. And then you can start to just slide it off. So it's going to be most tricky just to get it started. So you just have to kind of get your finger under there so you can get a good grip. And then it should just be able to slowly pop off. So try and do it nice and even, and there you go. So once you have that out, then we have to kind of peel away our saran wrap, right? So it might be caught in a couple of creases. So just take it nice and slow. But you shouldn't have any problems peeling off the saran wrap. And there we go. So make sure that it is all nice and dry on the inside. There's no reason why it shouldn't be, but just double check. And now we have to trim the edge, right? So it should be really easy. Just take a pair of scissors and it should cut through fine. So just cut a nice straight rim, or even not straight. You can do some scalloped edge, some nice little wave patterns. But just cut the rim. Might be a little tricky in a few places, especially if you did quite a few layers. You might need some really sharp scissors, and you might need your parents to help with this part if it's giving you some trouble, but hopefully not. And there we go. So the final step is to paint the inside, and then that's it. And there we have it. Here's my nice little bowl. I'm pretty happy with it. I might cut it down a little bit more just to make it more of like a trinket dish, but I like it. I hope you guys had fun doing this craft. I think it's really, really fun, and you can do lots more with it. It doesn't have to be a bowl. You can use this same kind of base to make plenty of other things. Alright guys, that's it for our overnight crafts. I'm pretty happy with them. I might try this one again just because I kind of messed it up a little bit. But I really like my bowl, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys had fun too. I'll be back next week with a couple of other crafts, and I hope I see you guys then. Bye!